Hello everyone. I hope this is working. This is the first time I've made a live uh, broadcast out of Facebook or pretty much anywhere. But I hope I hope somebody's able to find this. I mean, either way, I'm still gonna do a short bit of a broadcast of me reading part of my book in celebration of its launch, which is today. You can buy it right now on Kindle for $3.99 USD. If I am interrupted by my noisy cats or dog, I'm sorry. You can see Charlie back there. There's a somewhat noisy cat just right next to me. But, gosh, I hope my microphone's working. If someone does pop on, and I am just totally talking without making any sound, I'd absolutely love to know that my microphone's not working. Start a new stream, probably. Well, I suppose this is recorded whether someone jumps on or not. I can't exactly expect people to really be aware when I don't exactly let people know that I'm going to be streaming anything. So again, if you're watching this after the fact, I do apologize if either any of my animals make a bunch of noise, and you might even be able to hear my cat with a deviated septum wheezing over there because he makes a lot of noise when he breathes. But here we go. This is my book, Withered Kingdom. I'm going to try to read the entire overview, and hopefully I can just get through the overture, not overview, and read through the whole thing. Since I'm going to be reading directly off the screen, don't expect me to make eye contact with the camera. Anyway, here we go. Withered Kingdom by Nathan Thomas Orville. Overture, The Coronation. A silver horse with 2 riders streaked through a trail dividing fields of shriveled brown grass. The shiver of late winter numbed the riders but didn't slow them down. Magello Fyron and his father's attendant rode towards Silver Rock Castle, because today Magello would become king. His father, King Stam, had just died at sea. The prince stowed away on the same ship, but survived thanks to his father's attendant and his ice magic. Being an only child, Magello had to be crowned as soon as possible. They were on their 3rd horse since the ship went down 2 days ago. Their steeds' hooves plowed through dry leaves that rolled along the ground. Silver Rock rose out of the horizon as they crested the last hill and looked down into the valley. Silver Rock was the capital and largest city in Fyron. Inside its stone outer wall lay a small city, filled with families, merchants, blacksmiths, a collection of embassies, and more than a few soldiers' barracks. Their cottages and huts huddled close to one another as if to hide from the cold wind. Crooked cobbled roads ran through the city like dried straw cast out on stone. In the middle of the city sat Silver Rock Castle itself, old and faded. It looked like little more than a large stone building, if not for the tower in the center that reached high enough to be seen for miles around. With just a peek over the attendant's side, Magello knew they were almost there. The priests would coronate him there and present him from one of the balconies to the city, following news of the king's death. Sure, he could warm up inside, beside the crackling hearths, but any hint of eagerness soured into anxiety. The ceremony scared him. He liked so few as it was, but now people were his only business. On fresh horses, 2 more riders caught up to Magello's steed. They passed him and rode ahead, bearing pennants of the royal convoy. The city gates admitted all 3 horses, and together they spread into the narrow roads. The citizens stood quiet, watching the party gallop through the streets. Were they already looking to me as their king? Magello had to wonder. The castle itself stood like the face of a dirty glacier. Magello saw painters, like small brown beetles, crawl across the castle walls, on scaffolds, refreshing the exterior. Only the tower in the middle was not painted. It remained the color of the natural gray-tan stone it was made from. Magello looked up to the top, eyeing the lowest balcony. Lookouts placed at small wood-framed towers sounded bells to alert the castle that the royal party had arrived. The lead horse of the royal riders waved a green flag, a sign of victory. It was true. They had repelled the boldest naval attack Phyron faced in generations, but the weight in Magello's chest felt like defeat. "What's happened?" a young guard said to the attendant as they worked together to help Magello down off the horse. "Where is his majesty?" "You're holding him," the attendant said, and dismounted. "Master Polaris, where is King Stam?" "It's a green flag, Vetris," Polaris said. "Be careful." He removed his cloak, and another guard took it from him. "King Stam is dead. Ready the priests for coronation immediately." "Of course, Master Polaris." Vetris put his hand on the prince's back and led him inside the castle. A wave of warm air passed over them. "I must alert the priests." He knelt down on one armored knee and bowed his head. "I'm so sorry, Your Highness. Nobody expected this." Why did he need to cry? It wasn't his father that just died, it was mine, Magello thought. Mom would cry too, but not for Stam. She never cried for his father, even with his declining health over the last 5 years. She cried about Magello all the time, though. Sometimes he felt the sight of him was sorrowful for her, but she never withheld any ounce of affection. She would shower him with tear-wet kisses all the time. Maybe it was one of the things he wouldn't understand until he was older. The guard named Vetris left, and a priest in a white robe with a golden circlet on his head came to greet Magello. Without a word, they went for the stairs. It was a long climb, and his thighs were already saddle-sore. He held back the grimace at the rubbing pain brought to his face and pressed on. The unpolished stone was chilly on Magello's legs. The coronation gown he had to wear only went down as far as his upper knee. 12 stories high in the meditation tower, he worked to recover his breath, lost over the 108 steps up. A few wind-swept tears rolled down his cheeks and fell onto the interlocked fingers he held over his heart. The one beam of light coming through the windows in the rock walls of the castle tower brightened, revealing half a woman's face through a black veil. It was the face of his mother, and she spoke with a trembling throat. "Magello, you can't cry forever. Look at me. You knew this day would come. It's impressive the king lived as long as he did." She embraced him high on his shoulders, soaking some tears into her black dress. "You know what happens next, right?" "I know." His voice resisted the heaves of weeping. "But you don't have to do it. Since you aren't 18, you can leave. The kingdom of Ika has schools and plenty of friends for you to make. You will be safe there, I guarantee it. I won't think any less of you." "You're talking about exile." Magello's hands separated so he could adjust the part in his hair. "I won't think any less of my miracle child. The people want their king." "The crown is awful heavy." Magello's mother held his head between her thin, pale fingers. "I can handle it. I'm not just a boy anymore." As he stood up, the shoulder seams of his coronation gown trailed unevenly down the sides of his arms. His knees shook like he was carrying a boulder on his back. "Magello, you're just a boy. I'm not even sure the crown will fit on your head for the ceremony. You've always been so brave, but you don't need to be brave right now. You have options. If you open up those doors, you can't turn back. I know you love your father and you want to make him proud, even now, but it's still your choice." "This isn't about Dad," Magello said. "This isn't about you either." He said he had as much success making the starchy gown fit as someone trying to hold water onto a rock. "I have to stop him." "My baby," she whispered like her son had just slapped her in the face. "I need to make this right. If nobody stops the Emperor, he'll just keep killing people. Let me take the throne as regent until you're old enough. There are still many nations that will pay tribute to a queen. When you're old enough, I can pardon you and you can come back. The war may be over by then." She held out her arm as he walked around the altar between them. She retracted her hand, but he saw the open sore before her sleeve covered it up. "I'm not going to run away," he said just as he wrapped his fingers around the wrought iron doorknob to the coronation room. "They're inside, right? They'll be able to show me to the balcony?" he asked over his shoulder. The more he tried to steady his hand, the more noise the knob made as it jittered in its socket. Yes, she twisted her neck, dreading the sight of the knob turning. He could kill you, too. The Emperor has lived this long. He isn't going to give up. Magelo thought of the fields of Ica he rode through just yesterday, and the sweet taste of its clear spring water. He remembered the look in his father's only open eye, 2 days earlier. He never saw one eye filled with so much purpose, life, and caring. If his father could move both of his arms, he would have lifted Magelo up and given him a kiss on the cheek, before he told his attendants to lock him in the back of the ship. He would have given some final fatherly wisdom if his voice could have overcome the clamor of war. Just 2 days ago, Magelo's father was alive. Yesterday morning, the king's soldiers and aura magic repelled the Empire. It wasn't that long ago at all. He never imagined he would be here, standing in front of this door, at least not this soon. Magelo's hand lost all heat as he held it on the doorknob. It felt wet, but he knew the moisture came from his own palm. Too many people have given their lives to end this war. I'd do the same if I knew I could end it. We shouldn't have to live in fear anymore. You don't need to. His mother's voice sounded like it was coming through a door already. Just come here. Magelo couldn't see it, but he knew she was waving him toward her for a frail, uneven hug. I have to do the right thing. The doorknob remained in place. His mother sat silent. The gray clouds stayed as still as mountains. The wind stopped, and he wiped droplets as cold as seawater from his forehead. If he let go, he could live in Ica. That eastern land promised sun-warmed hair, and long pasture afternoons. The grass would be alive under his feet, unlike the cobbled floor where he stood. Magelo's fingers creaked at the joints lightly when he pulled his hand off the knob. I'm so scared. The words probably didn't make it past his lips. His blood stopped the moment his hand left contact with the door. But I will do whatever I can. The knob clattered and gave way. Magelo shoved the wooden doors open and felt the air come alive. A slight breeze, like the leading hand of a father, guided him into the coronation room. King Magelo stood up to his full height. On the 12th anniversary of his father's death, he returned to that same balcony, 1.5 feet taller and 2 lifetimes wiser. Wearing polished yet experienced light steel armor, Magelo pulled the clasps of his thick cape close together to keep himself warm. He gripped the edge of the balcony, breathed in the breeze of an approaching spring, and spoke up. Polaris, Nova, come here. Polaris arrived first and stood stiff as a post, holding a salute. His hair was gray-white now, and he wore the white-sashed garb of a royal attendant. What is it, Your Majesty? Nova hopped up to the king's other side a second later. Nova stood a full foot of rippling bulk, taller than the others. His long auburn hair glistened like oily fire as the daylight highlighted the streaks of bright red in his frizzy locks. He saluted, then rested both of his arms on his belt. Magelo, we're here for you. Nova cleared his throat. It's been a year since I made you a general commander. That makes you a member of the senior war council. King Magelo turned, and both of the men stepped sideways to face him. I have a decision to make, and I wanted to talk it over with the only council members I trust here at the castle. The wind picked up, carrying flurries. Imperial forces are closing in on Kiloba to the north. It's the furthest stretch of the Protectorate now. I trust Captain Jadrian, but he's only been there a month. We can't fortify that position in time if the Empire attacks now. Worse yet, that may be a distraction. The Emperor could move to invade our lands using a route through the Adwell region. It's like trying to sleep with a short blanket. Every troop we move from one front weakens the other. I must ask the two of you then, which should we defend? Magelo scratched the stubble on his chin. Your Majesty, General Nova began, Kiloba is a prized ally and an important member of the Protectorate. Our relationship is already strained after last year's attacks. We should send all available forces to Kiloba. It would boost confidence in the citizens and morale in the soldiers. The general's sentiments are stirring, but I must disagree. Polaris stepped closer to the king. Killuba, sitting in a mountain pass, serves as a bottleneck into the protectorate. Even if it fell to an attack, it's a day or two's travel for a laden army to reach the next city or province. Captain Jadreen is a strong leader, and it will take a week in prime weather to get troops there. The journey to Adwell is a day or two, downhill, and boasts untapped hunting and gathering grounds to support our forces on the way west. The decision is clear. We should mobilize our forces toward the swamps in Adwell and set up our defenses before the thaw. If we can trap the Orncanians in the mud, we can cripple them, no matter how big the army. Right, and let Killuba get trampled in the process. General Nova rested his hand on his belt buckle. Your Majesty, if we can't protect our strongest ally, we will lose tribute money and volunteer soldiers from the Protectorate territories. We'll have to fight this war at these very walls. Nova leaned on the stone of the battlement in front of him. We can't stand by and watch that light go out. The smart choice right now, Your Majesty, is for us to pick our battles as wisely as we can. Polaris adjusted his collar. We can talk about looking at the big picture all we want, but we must do what we can now. If we do nothing, we are as good as burnt out in the eyes of the rest of the world. How will it look if we send all our forces to Killuba and they arrive late? Or worse, get there and fail anyway? At least we will have tried to live up to our commitment. Nova looked down his nose at Polaris. The question isn't about whether or not we take losses. That's not how war works. Polaris ignored Nova's scoff that could have been mistaken for a choke. It's about which losses we take. We ran out of acceptable losses some time ago. Acceptable losses? Each battle, win or lose, is life lost. No loss is acceptable. And yet we must accept them. If we lose Killuba, we can keep our own borders secure, play to our strengths, and maintain some internal integrity, even if the other nations look down on us. Polaris huffed out his nose. The choice is yours, Your Majesty. I doubt any further advice would be beneficial. We're too close to the issue to think clearly, apparently. Nova folded his arms after raking his fingers through the front of his tangled hair. We're all too close, Magillo said, reaching a hand to his brow, as though he were trying to prevent a stack of books from falling off his head. That's the problem. We can't look at this from a better angle than the one the Emperor has forced on us. I need to think about it alone. Both of you are dismissed. Magillo didn't watch them leave. He just heard the door to the inside hall shut. Tilting the battle crown back off his forehead, he looked over the castle town. The streets cleared when the flurries turned into sharp rain. He only heard his own breathing and watched the fog of it vanish into the wind. How am I supposed to do this? He asked his father, hoping his words could somehow reach the heavens. We're done. This is our last stand. I can't see any way out. Didn't the old kings promise 4 angels? He turned his eyes to the sheet of smoky clouds. Is this the end? The guard captain, Vetris, came through the door in time to catch a little of the king's prayer. Not yet, Your Majesty. I wish I had that hope. Magillo ended his brooding. I'm not talking about hope, Your Majesty. The old kings promised a king would reign in Fyron until the end of the world. Vetris waited, shrugged, and then left. I doubt 4,000 angels could turn things back now, Magillo said to the sky again. In the rain, he heard another sound. A low pop or bang, one that shook the whole air and ground, like a word spoken by the heavens themselves, but in a language he didn't know. It rang out soft but deep, as though it moved his soul for a split second. The echo died in the rain a moment later, but had done its job. The sound came from the east, toward the swamps. Almost 20 minutes there. I think that's a pretty good place to stop. That's the whole overture for the book, which is basically a prologue, but I'm using theatrical terms, or, terms that you would see in a play, I suppose. Acts and scenes versus chapters. for this book. Something that I did in my first book as well. Thank you to anyone who does end up watching this. I hope my microphone's been working this whole time, or it's going to be really embarrassing. Thanks for watching. I'll try to do more of these sometime and maybe get a better webcam, because I know this one looks awful. But it's what we have right now. Thanks, everyone.